This farmer decided to give cashew nut trees a try 2 years ago, and they've since helped him make a small fortune.
I look after my cashew trees like my babies because they help me pay for my children's school fees.
He's one of 20,000 farmers in the Kilifi region to have joined a cashew training program. It hopes to revive the once thriving industry along Kenya's coast.
The program has given us a lot of hope. We received these new seedlings and agronomy training to learn how to manage our cashew trees. They're now my most valuable crop. Cashews sell at 60 shillings per kilo compared to 5 shillings for a kilo of mangoes.
The nut is found on the bottom of this fruit. It twists off easily, but the real work is only just getting started. Once harvested, the nuts are sent for processing in factories like this one, which opened in response to the soaring demand and investment in the industry, worth €7 billion. The owner of the factory believes that adding value to Kenya's nuts is crucial.
Out of the maybe 3 or 4 million tons of cashew produced in Africa, 70% of it is exported to other countries for processing. I think we are exporting jobs when you do that, because these 600 people wouldn't have a job if we didn't process here.
The workers are mostly women. They're paid the minimum wage of almost €3 a day. Workers here make sure the nuts look perfect before they're sold. But they don't deal with the dangerous part of the processing, which consists of removing the nut from the toxic shell.
It has a burning effect on the skin, the resin. That's why we want to automate the process to enable us be able to have less exposure to our staff to resin.
Because the modernized industry is still in its early days, regulations to ensure that these modern machines are used and that workers' rights are respected are not yet in place. Ananda Shadrach takes us to another factory. He's an activist who's been working to improve the rights of these workers. Women here are in direct contact with the resin. They work in cramped conditions, and their pay is dependent on the amount of nuts they produce. On average, they earn just over €1 a day. Ananda isn't welcome. He's told to leave the premises.
That was so horrible. They are not wearing gloves. They are not wearing cords. No helmets, no gumboots, no any protective gear that are supposed to wear. You could see that the women are actually doing the cracking. And you know that fluid is very toxic. You are not supposed to handle it, actually.
Last year, Ananda raised the alarm about another factory with similar working conditions. The county government forced that company to close. But when we get there, we find another factory behind this gate.
I met with the women and did the interview. And then I shared the story on Twitter, on my Twitter page, and it went viral. I want to have this story shared, and the women working in these factories get their rights.
These are the photos that were on Ananda's tweet. It shows the women's hands after working with the resin. Later that night, we meet some of the victims working in the industry. They want to remain anonymous.
We're being exploited. I've tried to mobilize my colleagues to strike so that our wages are increased, but they're afraid of losing their jobs because there's no other work for us here. My hands have wounds all over them. I can't even wash my children's uniforms anymore.
Spurred into action by Ananda's work, Kenya's National Commission of Human Rights in Mombasa conducted an investigation into Kilifi's cashew nut industry.
We are at cashew land. We just got in without no protocol, no PPs.
They've written a report about how the industry is violating human rights.
They want to normalize everything. They want the cost of business to be very low, but to the expense of violating human rights, which is wrong. So we cannot say we are already respecting business and human rights in the country. But we are progressively going towards that.
The report contains recommendations to the factories and investors. It's due to be published this year. These trees have a huge potential in the region. Cashews are America and Europe's favorite nut. But human rights groups are calling on supermarkets and consumers to ensure fair trade practices are respected. so that the nuts can bear fruit for people living here as well.